Hello and welcome back to True Crime Guys podcast. It's just Michael. I know. Is anyone even listening still? Anyway, I have a quick announcement, guys. Obviously, this is weird, right? Lauren's not here. Lauren has been sick this week. He actually missed 2 days of work. It's crazy. He's always at work. So that was strange. But yeah, so he is recovering from a sickness. And also our crime line writer, Sarah, has been at a destination wedding all week. So Lauren had to do the crime line, sick, and he's not really doing a good job. You know, he's kind of rusty. He probably hasn't done one in a while. So, you know, he's got to kind of pull himself up from his bootstraps and get back at it. But yeah, we didn't want to put out a half-assed Patreon episode this week. So we decided to release an old Patreon, the oldest Patreon episode we have, as a freebie, as a treat for everybody. And obviously you won't hear the Patreon banter shit at the beginning and at the end, you freeloaders, because it doesn't apply to you. You know, if you want to hear the original version, you have to join Patreon. And if Patreon people want to get all flustered about it, that's ridiculous, because this episode's like 2 years old. So, you know, I mean, I think getting episodes 2 years early is totally worth it. So there. So without further ado, this is our John Wayne Gacy episode. Our first ever Patreon episode. Our first ever. So be nice, okay? Don't go in here leaving bad reviews. Okay? This is from the vault. This is 2 years ago, True Crime Guys. You guys remember those guys, right? How terrible they were. All right, here we go. Roll the show. See you guys at the end.
We realized by 1993 that 50% of the American families will be single-parented, and that shows a breakdown in the church and not being able to hold families together. And for this reason, children run away from home and seek love in other places.
All right, who's our case for this first ever premium episode? None other than
Pogo the Clown.
Pogo the Clown, or maybe Patches the Clown.
Or maybe Patches. Or
Which
maybe Mr. John Wayne Gacy.
Which would you prefer if you're going to be a clown, Pogo or Patches?
Definitely. Oh, wait.
I like Pogo.
You like Pogo?
I like Pogo. I'm going to go with Pogo.
I think it fit his personality.
And that was definitely
more.
the name. That was the clown name he was known much more for than Patches.
Pogo sounds so silly.
And he was a silly man.
He was
a silly man. So John Wayne Gacy's, who we're covering this week, he was, if not the most, he's top 3 most infamous serial killers of all time, I'd say.
Yeah.
I mean, you think the word serial killer.
Prolific as well, probably.
The words serial killer, he's maybe the first one that pops out of your mouth when you.
Maybe. Right after Dahmer.
Dahmer, Gacy, and Bundy. Those,
Yeah.
I think they're like if you had a Mount Rushmore, they're on there for sure.
Yeah.
And you'd have Pogo up there.
Oh, would you?
He'd
so
be the
Gacy
one.
would have 2?
Yeah.
Okay.
It'd be,
I don't think he's that special.
No, it's just Pogo. He was the bad side. He was the actual killer.
Oh. Over there smirking on the backside of the
Although
mountain. It's on
he
the
did-
backside of his head.
Right. Although he didn't really wear his clown suit when he killed. That wasn't typical. There was one instance that we'll get into where he was wearing the suit, supposedly. But let's get into his childhood and his past to start this thing out. John Wayne Gacy was born in Chicago, Illinois on March 17th, 1942. He's from Polish and Danish descent.
Yeah. I can see that.
Shared a birthday with none other than my favorite actor, Kurt Russell.
Oh,
That's-
sorry. Well, look, your favorite positive person and your favorite negative person share the same day.
I don't know if he's my. I guess
I know,
he was fun to study.
I thought you would go along with it for the show, but I guess
No,
not.
I can't.
Fuck you.
I can't give you that.
No.
No freebies. Kurt Russell, though, what's your favorite movie? The Thing for me.
Oh,
The Thing.
Man, I don't
Overboard was great. Overboard. Why am I bringing up Overboard? I mean, he's been in way better stuff than that. Did you see that Tarantino film with him?
Oh, a death race.
Death Proof.
Death Proof.
Yes.
I like that one.
Yeah.
Let's go with that one.
All right. Well, he's in the same birthday as John Wayne Gacy. That's an unfortunate thing to share with him. He's the only son and second of 3 children. So he had 2 sisters, an older and a younger sister.
Right.
He got the middle name Wayne from his father's favorite actor, John Wayne.
How dare he?
And he's also a junior. His dad's name was also John.
I feel like his dad would be like, I wasted that on him.
Right? I should have saved it for my next son.
God damn.
He never had another son, so like, he really had to just take what he got.
Yeah.
His father was John Stanley Gacy. He was an auto repair machinist and World War I veteran.
Yeah, hardcore.
That's staggering. That's World War I is
That's like,
my favorite war to study. That shit was brutal. If you haven't looked into World War I, like really dig deep. I recommend Dan Carlin's Hardcore History 5-part series.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
If you got weeks.
Yeah, it's about 20-something hours, I think, maybe longer. But it's unbelievable. And to think his father fought in that would make a lot of sense to find out how troubled he was later, because he would end up being a really abusive and alcoholic father. His mother, however, was on the other spectrum. Her name was Marion Elaine Robinson. She was a homemaker and basically doted on young John Wayne Gacy and his sisters as well.
Had to
this is
balance things
typical.
out.
This is typical. I mean,
they're like, oh, poor John gets harassed.
wasn't
by
it Randy
daddy.
Kraft that was the same thing? Because mom and sisters toted on him as well.
Yep.
Yeah,
Sure was.
he's a lot of William Bonin and Randy Kraft in this guy.
Yeah.
Randy Kraft especially, because he's got the two faces. You know, like he had a good public persona, and then
Absolutely.
yeah, we'll get into it. He had many issues as a child as well, like physically.
Well, yeah. Some might thought it was his father didn't really believe it. Thought it was more a mental thing,
Right.
or him just being a wuss. But
He had a heart condition that prevented him from playing with other kids. He was overweight. And when he was 11 years old, he actually had an incident with a swing where he got hit in the head and knocked unconscious. And it would end up being found out years later that he had a blood clot, which made it those years where they didn't have that diagnosed on him. He was having frequent bouts of he would faint in class. Isn't this something? He also shared this with Richard Ramirez. Richard Ramirez, remember he had that shell fall on him.
Well,
and
there was a few killers.
And then he
that
kept
were done.
passing out randomly, like he would.
Right.
In class one time, he would just faint or whatever, wasn't it?
Yeah. Just have
Or he had
blackouts, but they
seizures.
eventually stopped though.
It was
They eventually
seizures.
stopped for both of them.
Yeah, well, because with Gacy, he would end up, as they would finally diagnose him. I think he was 16 when they finally diagnosed it, and they started giving him medication to, I guess, clear out the blood clot that he had.
Right.
So he had a really close relationship with his mother, as we mentioned. His father was extremely abusive, not only mentally but physically.
Yeah.
There was a time where he beat him with a broomstick and knocked him unconscious. He was constantly calling him a sissy, belittling him, calling him homophobic slurs, and
this is not so much punishment for John doing something wrong. It could just be an inconvenience to his father.
Right.
Like it could be anything. Like he got beat one time because he rearranged the car parts in the garage. Like just any little thing that his
Set
father
him off,
Yeah. Just any little thing. I mean, this guy was always loaded and ready to go anyways.
And he was always disappointed in Gacy because he wanted a manly son, but Gacy wasn't that. Gacy was more into gardening with his mom, cooking, hanging out with his sisters, and his dad wanted him to go fishing and be a man.
Right.
What back in this day, 40s and 50s was looked upon. You're supposed to be a little man,
Yeah.
But I think Gacy from a very young age had a identity crisis because he was homosexual, I believe, through his whole life. He always was in denial, always, but
yeah, he never had a good relationship with his father. You talked about going fishing, his father would quote unquote make an effort to do things with him, take him fishing. And then later on in life, he actually recalls that one of the fishing trips where he spent, I guess, a weekend or so with him as one of the major low points in his life. Just a fishing trip. And it's one of the major...
Because his dad was probably just belittling him the entire time he was out there.
He said everything that went wrong was his fault. Every single thing.
Yeah, that's rough.
They weren't catching any fish. It's your fault.
Yeah.
Just everything.
I saw something. I only saw this in one thing I researched, and it was about him being molested by a family friend when he was 9. Supposedly, if a friend would drive him around in his pickup truck and fondle him while he was in there. Now, I didn't see it in the documentary that I watched. The documentaries I watched, I didn't read it in the book that we read.
Right.
Which actually, it's a good time to talk about the resources that we used for this episode real quick.
Sure.
I wanted to mention that in the beginning, but I forgot. So we read the book by Sam L. Amarante, who was actually his defense lawyer.
Yeah.
And the book was called John Wayne Gacy Defending a Monster. Epic book.
Very good book.
Really good. It went... I'd say the second half of the book was entirely about the trial.
Yeah,
which
still
some people love that.
though.
It was still interesting. So if you're into the courtroom battles and all that, it was great. and just
Yeah.
the whole first half of the book.
Oh man,
you learned
it
a lot
starts
about
off
Gacy.
right away, and it gets right into the action of like it gets into like this final kill.
Yeah,
You know,
you get a lot of insight
Then
onto
it backs up.
Gacy as a person, because this guy was his lawyer and had a lot of one-on-one conversations with Gacy
man,
and got to know him pretty well.
you could imagine the daunting task of being his lawyer.
Oh my goodness, yeah, because he's just changed from one second to the next. You know, he's just,
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyways, also we watched 2 documentaries. One was by Biography. I guess I've seen biography documentaries. I don't know if it's a certain company that makes them or whatever, but it was really good. It was just called John Wayne Gacy Biography. Also, Crime Stories did one on him, the Sociopath series for John Wayne Gacy. We watched that as well. And as well as studied a bunch of different articles and stuff on him. So.
Yeah, all the other good stuff.
Yeah. So as he got older, the abuse from his father only got worse. He couldn't really say anything without his dad, just belittling him or hitting him or whatever. And when he was younger, also one thing to note is, kind of gives you some insight. This is a big one. His best friend told a story later on, did interviews, and talked about how Gacy used to steal his mother's undergarments, her underwear, her bras.
This is at a very young age. This is like 5.
Yeah.
He just like was obsessed with like the material, supposedly.
Right. And we talked about, I thought he was a homosexual from birth, basically. I don't. And so I think this gives you a little more insight. He would like to wear them.
Yeah.
And masturbate with them, or he just liked the idea of wearing them in general.
Yeah. Well, he was doing this for a long time. Like,
it wasn't just
obviously the masturbation was like in his teen years. This wasn't at 5 years old.
Yeah.
Let's make that clear.
I don't know. That's when I started, bro.
Well, damn. But anyways, no, like at 5, like he would get caught with his mother's. He would have his mother's clothes.
Right.
And he wasn't masturbating with them, but when he was done playing with them or whatever he did,
crazy is
he would bury them under the house.
That's a little foreshadowing.
Bury them under the house.
We'll just leave that there.
At 5 years
old. Let's let that
old.
sit there.
At 5 years old, people. It's just, if there's not a miswiring from the factory, I don't know.
Right. And something important to note also, that he was an average student, but he was bright. He was on the bright normal IQ range. He had
Like
a
118. Right?
118. He was tested as a teenager, I believe, and that's not a bad score. We've had higher, we've had lower. That's for
It's
sure.
probably a lot higher than me.
Right, but I guess he had issues focusing. I just went with it. Right?
Yeah, you're like,
definitely.
Yeah. We're not arguing that here.
No, I would say me.
If you're looking for a compliment, you're looking in the wrong place.
You're probably in the 120s. I'm probably like a 90,
A 90. Come on.
But I'm street smart.
Oh, there we go. We gotta make up for it.
Smart somewhere.
All right, Fredo. I guess he would have issues in class. Focusing was a big problem. You see that a lot with these guys that end up being serial killers. It's not that they're not smart. They just don't give a shit about not killing people. I don't want to hear about history.
Hey, like, are we gonna kill somebody in math today? Well, it ain't showing up.
When are you going to teach me how to make a noose? Where's the knife play class? All right, so after attending 4 different high schools, Gacy would drop out before completing his senior year. At 18, he became involved in politics, working as an assistant precinct captain for the Democratic Party candidate in his neighborhood.
Oh, look at him moving on up.
Moving on up. Yeah, he was, and this is like the beginning of a very long, he would always get involved in local politics.
Yeah. He was always willing to volunteer for whatever events going on.
And
but
he would grind.
He wanted his credit, though.
He did.
Yeah,
it was about the attention for
Obviously,
him, no doubt.
yeah.
He wanted people to like him. He wanted to be important in the little area he lived in. He wanted everyone to know his name. He was that guy.
Looking for positions of authority. Yeah.
Right. That was the biggest thing. I think he wanted to be powerful.
Yep.
I guess that was the perfect way. He just wanted to be a powerful, well-known guy. Politician would have been probably perfect for him.
Yeah, probably.
Could have been droning people.
Yeah, but he was supposed to be a politician, then be scandalous. He got him backwards.
He did.
That's okay.
He just mixed them in. He started to get the politics going, and then didn't wait long
You got to
enough.
wait till you're at a higher level, so you're above the law.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, come on, Gacy. Classic mistake.
Right. Wait till you're president of the JCs before you start raping kids and stuff.
You even mentioned that yet?
At 18.
You haven't mentioned JCs yet.
No.
All right, anyways, here we go.
More foreshadowing.
Foreshadow everything.
His father bought him a car at around the same age, at 18 years old, with the title being in his father's name until Gacy completed the monthly payments.
Yeah. And
Gacy wanted his own car.
He wanted a cheaper car. He was
Right.
going to buy a cheaper car so he could own it. But this is just another example of his father's got to have control over everything.
his father's tyranny.
Yeah.
He wanted to be able to have something to hold over Gacy.
And then he sold it to him as, oh, well, you can have a better car if I just loan you this little bit.
Right.
But then,
better pay.
Daddy's
Fuck you,
paws
pay
are
me.
on it.
Fuck
Yep.
you, pay me.
Yep.
And so this would basically, like we talked about, the payments would take several years to complete. And with the vehicle being in his father's name, his father would just constantly, every time Gacy wanted to do something or his father wanted him to do something, he would just take the keys from him until he got what he wanted. And but this would end up driving Gacy crazy. And after a big dispute with his father, he would take the car and head west to Las Vegas.
Hey,
Las Vegas,
fabulous Las Vegas.
It seems like that happens a lot. We always have like a Las Vegas reference in these.
Yeah,
it's unintentional. I knew quite a bit about Gacy going into this one. This wasn't one of those ones I went in completely in the dark, but I didn't know that he had like a brief stint in Vegas.
Yeah, pretty brief, but yeah.
I mean, yeah, as a teenager, it wasn't that long, but It's pretty interesting the shit that happened here.
It is.
He quickly found work as an ambulance driver, and this is something that it just speaks to Gacy. He's like everywhere he went, he always had opportunities because he would just get in, he would weasel his way in, and he was like likable, I guess, in a harmless way. Like he was not an intimidating guy.
Yeah.
He was just like, he would get in there and he's just like, hey, how you doing?
Hey,
and like,
what's up?
He's like a salesman, the perpetual salesman of himself to people.
Yeah.
And so everywhere he went, he could get jobs easily. So he goes to Vegas and he becomes an ambulance driver, and he's not even old enough to drive ambulances, which is what ends up, once they found out that he wasn't old enough, they would end up cutting him loose. But because...
Of all places to check age, like...
I know, right?
Well, I guess they didn't qualify. I guess to be an ambulance driver then, you didn't have to actually be a paramedic. See, like now, you can't drive an ambulance.
You're just
if you're
a
not
driver.
a paramedic. Yeah.
Right.
So they just had drivers.
Right.
It seems like a waste of a person.
Pizza delivery guy or ambulance driver is pretty much the same thing.
Oh, is it?
During that time. That's what I'm saying. You delivering bodies, you delivering pizzas. What's the difference?
Hey.
So once they discovered he wasn't old enough, just like I said about finding jobs, I guess as the ambulance driver, part of it would be a guy's dead. You drive him to the morgue or to the funeral parlor.
Oh,
and he made connections at the funeral parlor from dropping these bodies off.
So he was a post-emergency driver.
No, I'm saying sometimes. He wasn't always just driving dead bodies around. I'm saying if it went wrong, he would end up somehow, I don't know how this works, but he met somebody at a funeral parlor.
They're like, nah, they're dead. Just go ahead and head to the funeral parlor.
Cut the middleman.
John's like, oh, thank God.
I'm going to go hang out with bodies. He would end up, however it happened, he got connections through the funeral parlor, and he ended up getting a job through them. Yeah. And he would become a mortuary attendant, and he would sleep on a cot behind the embalming room.
Of course he would.
Of course that's how this works. That's a natural upbringing.
I'm surprised he wouldn't sleep on the table.
I mean, he's going through the courses to become, like, he's going to college for becoming a serial killer. It's like abusive, drunken father, ends up playing with, like, hanging around bodies as a teenager, you know?
Yeah.
And
he's checking all the boxes.
Yeah, he would later admit to sleeping with a young male corpse one night.
Okay, well, I didn't know that.
I mean, you're there, you're sleeping, they're sleeping.
Yeah,
it's easy.
Right.
You want a little company?
Is that drawer getting a little cold in there?
Yeah. Not right.
No. Was it?
No.
I shouldn't have said that.
No, I'm saying it wasn't right what he did.
Oh, well, obviously not.
Stop taking it lightly, Michael. So he would sleep with a young male corpse, and that probably planted some kind of a seed in his head. I'm sure there's more seeds to be planted later. He would end up getting tired of Vegas. I guess he couldn't handle the heat. He was always, like we said, he was usually almost his whole life he was overweight.
Right.
I don't think he liked the heat out here.
Yeah, it does get hot here.
It's tough on the bigger people.
Yep.
Yeah, only the strong survive.
All the people, actually.
Yeah, it's tough either way. If you're carrying around some extra baggage, it's that much harder. He would go back home to Chicago, and he would end up actually enrolling in the Northwestern Business College. Even without graduating from high school, he would end up enrolling in business college and graduate in 1963.
Dude, just talks his way through life.
Right? I feel like he would just like faked his way through college.
I think about that season of The Office where Robert California comes on there and he just talks his way into the job.
We've talked about how...
You really don't know that reference.
What about Seinfeld? There was an episode where George Costanza got a job that he had no business having, and then he just sat in
job
the
for the Yankees
all day. Yeah, that too.
No.
George is getting angry. All right, we're being too silly. Let's stick to the story here.
Get back on track, Lauren.
All right, so back in Chicago, he graduated from college in '63, business college, and he would shortly after get a management trainee position with the Nunn Bush Shoe Company. Where he would quickly become the highest grossing salesman. Like we talked about, I feel like if there's anything Gacy was born to do, even more than killing, it was selling shit.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say shoes.
Selling shoes.
If there's anything this man was born to do, it's selling shoes.
He's got Al Bundy written all over him. But he was always selling anything himself. But like we talked about, himself was a big one.
Yeah.
But shoes, I feel like he could sell a turd to somebody, or as they say, ice to a
Eskimo.
That's
right.
Pretty much. That's who he was. So
Sand to a Vegas resident.
yeah. And so with him kicking ass as a shoe salesman, he would actually get transferred to Springfield, where he was promoted to manager of his department. There he met and became engaged to what would be his first wife, Marilyn Myers. She was a coworker within the department. Her family, this kind of fit what, I think this is part of it. He may have liked her, but I think part of it was her status, because she had a well-off family. It would help his status in the community. Her father...
That's something they mentioned in almost every documentary I watched.
Yeah.
They mentioned the fact that the marriage was mainly for financial gain.
Yeah.
Or status, yeah.
Yeah. They would end up getting married in 1964. Marilyn's father owned 3 KFCs in Waterloo, Iowa.
Oh, big time colonel.
He's the colonel. He would end up moving there. Him and Marilyn would move to Iowa so that he could manage the 3 KFCs. He would be trained and then end up managing these 3 KFCs.
Nice.
At which point he, from there on, insisted by almost everyone he met in the future to be called the colonel, which just shows you how silly and ridiculous this man is.
That's strange.
There, while in Waterloo, Iowa, he would become big in an organization called the JCs, which before John Wayne Gacy, I'd never heard of this organization.
Me either.
It's basically
It's called. Like we should have.
It stands for the United States Junior Chamber. JCs, Junior Chamber.
Gotcha.
It's a civic organization. I guess they just do stuff around the community.
Yeah.
And but I think it's a way for a bunch of dudes to just feel important about themselves. You know what I mean? Like they give themselves important titles. Like they've got a president. They've got
Do they?
Yeah.
It's like a country club.
It's like their own little shitty government.
Oh, you think so?
Sorry if you're in the JCs and you're listening to this.
Yeah, way to go.
At JC meetings, Gacy would often provide free chicken to his colleagues and insisted upon being given the nickname Colonel.
Of course.
In '65, Gacy had risen to the position of vice president of the Springfield JCs. We talked about how now he can feel all important.
Hey, man. He's boss.
Hey.
Over people.
Hey, I'm a colonel. I'm a vice president.
Call me Colonel.
I kill kids.
Oh, well, we haven't got to that yet.
Gacy's wife gave birth to 2 children, a son named Michael, who was born on February 1966.
Well, it's a good name, at
looking
least.
at you, buddy.
Yeah.
If you say so. I don't know.
If I was born in 1966, you need some of this shit that I'm eating.
You look like a guy that could be born from John Wayne Gacy. That's all I'm saying.
Wow.
Michael would end up being followed by a daughter named Christine in March of 1967. During this time, Gacy and his wife were swinging.
Well, you forgot to mention that this is like the first time in forever his dad was proud of him.
Yes. While in
John
Iowa,
Sr.
he's raising up through the JCs. He's now got a wife, and he's having children, and his father is finally... There's a moment he has where he would later talk about it, how he had a moment with his father where his father finally basically admitted, like,
it's about time I became a man.
I was a dick all these years. I realize you're not gay. Yeah. You got a nice little family.
That's right. But don't be gay, though.
Yeah. What a douche.
I know you're still gay.
Don't let me catch you slipping.
Right.
And as I started to mention, during this time while he was with his wife, they started swinging together. So they would swap partners with people.
Well, because Gacy was confused at this time. He
was always confused.
He was always confused, but
I'm sure he wanted to be straight because I think what mattered to him at a younger age more than anything was making his father proud. And if he was being himself, he wasn't going to make his father proud, Right.
But it's different, though, when you find who you think is the one, though. Like, when you find that person you think is the one, and then you're like, oh, this is still not doing it for me.
Right.
It's like something may be off here. Because, with other people, you just might not be as compatible with, throughout his life. But when you find, when he found his first wife, you know what I mean? Obviously, he loved her and cared about her enough.
He wanted her to be able to fulfill everything, which he couldn't. He always had more desires for young men, basically.
He thought if I had a wife, the one that's for me, and I have children and things, then I'll figure out who I am. Yeah,
so even the swinging wasn't enough, though. Like, he's swinging with other couples, and during this time, he's also going out, drinking, picking up male prostitutes, making advances on young male associates at KFC.
Right.
And playing them off as a joke. That's also another thing that kind of, you hear several people that would end up surviving Gacy, and they had stories to tell about close calls with him, and it's always like he would try to kind of laugh it off, like, I'm not gay. What's the problem here?
I'm not gay.
I was just testing you. It's you passed. It's fine.
Hey, blowjob's a blowjob, pal.
Right? Don't matter if it's from a boy or girl.
Right.
Hey. Anyways, so during that time, like we said, he's swinging, but that's still not enough. He's still making advances on young men, picking up young prostitutes. He's able to go mostly unnoticed doing all this through a time until he picked the wrong young boy to mess around with.
Right.
Around this time, he lured a 15-year-old boy named Donald Voorhees, who was actually the son of a fellow JC member. He lured him into his basement where they had so-called consensual oral sex. I guess Donald Voorhees was a homosexual.
Right.
But I think what happened was Gacy got rough with him and did some stuff he wasn't.
Yeah.
He shouldn't have been messing around with a 15-year-old to begin with, first of all. And he would do some stuff that he would make him worried about Donald saying something.
Yeah, I don't see how consensual even helps the situation at all. Like, that's what he always pushed later on. He's like, it was consensual. I'm like, still
he's 15 and you're
still
how old?
bad? Still bad.
Yeah, he's 15 and you're 25.
Right.
He would end up paying Donald $50 to hoping that Donald would keep his mouth shut. Didn't work. A few months later, Donald Voorhees reported to his father that Gacy had sexually assaulted him. Yeah. Gacy, throughout the process, denied because this was going to kill.
He was like, give me a lie detector test.
Yeah, give me a lie detector test. He's worried about this killing his reputation in the community. You know, now all the JCs are going to know because this kid's the son of somebody in it.
Right. So he failed the lie detector test.
They gave him 2 lie detector tests. He failed them both. And he was indicted on sodomy. Leading up to the trial, however, Gacy tried to remedy this whole situation himself. He would pay an employee at KFC $300 to beat Voorhees up and then threaten him not to testify in court.
Right.
So the employee does just what Gacy asked him to do. He actually showed up in a parking lot, maced the kid and kicked him and told him not to testify. But he kind of underestimated Donald Voorhees. Maybe it's that last name, the Jason. Isn't that Jason's last name from Friday the 13th?
Is
Voorhees?
Yeah, maybe.
I think so. This is a little Jason kid. Some kid beating him up in a parking lot ain't gonna. He still reported this, and this actually only made things worse and did not make the judge any more lenient on the situation when the trial came around. The judge would end up slapping Gacy down with a 10-year sentence, which is actually the maximum punishment he could receive for sodomy of a young teenager. And with him going away for potentially the next 10 years, his wife would file for divorce.
Right.
This would be the last time he'd ever see his first wife and his 2 kids that he had with her.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
They was gone.
I looked to see
that was
if he ever had any more contact with them, but he never did.
Nope, they were gone.
That's sad.
He would be incarcerated at the Anamosa State Penitentiary, where he would excel. I think he was meant to, if he would have just gone away, he would have had a happy life in prison for the rest of his life. He just couldn't handle choices in life.
Right.
You know what I mean? He excelled when told what to do. Maybe he would have been good in the military. I don't know. But when he had a clear path. But when he was left to his own devices, he couldn't handle it. Because in prison, you see him excelling.
And he always found a way to get what he wanted. So imagine how much harder that would be as a person going, I can have whatever I want right now.
In the world.
Yeah, in the world.
Whereas in prison, you can only go so far.
Right.
Because in prison, he would become head chef. And everyone loved his cooking there. I guess the cooking went up tenfold when Gacy arrived. He actually knew how to use spices and seasonings. And
they actually interviewed him on a news program.
Yeah, you can watch these interviews of him during his first prison sentence.
And you can tell the way he's talking, he's not just a half-assed cook. I mean, he took this very seriously.
Oh, yeah. Serious as a heart attack. And he would also be singing in the choir. And he just seemed like he excelled in prison, man. He just should have just never left.
Right.
Unfortunately, it would only last 18 months. His prison stay. He was because of good behavior, although it's questionable because there is one
incident. Right? I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, his hatred for himself / fellow homosexuals. This is a good example of it.
Yep.
At one point during his prison stay, he was walking back to his cell and witnessed 2 inmates giving oral sex to each other.
Yeah.
Where this enraged him, and he went up and kicked one of them in the face.
I wonder which one it was.
Right, the one receiving or giving? Probably the one receiving, I would think. It'd be a little hard to get the other one, wouldn't it?
The one giving, then that's hurtful for both.
Yeah, it is. Let's hope he doesn't bite down.
That's a 1-2 punch kick.
Yeah, so it wasn't all that good, his stay there. Maybe the prison system was... kind of had the same feelings for him as far as homosexuals went, and that it wasn't a big deal to them. To me, that's not good behavior if you're assaulting fellow inmates out of nowhere like that. He would only, like we said, spend 18 months in prison. Also important to note, speaks to his go-getterness when it came to getting shit done. On one occasion while in prison, he oversaw the installation of a miniature golf course on the prison
Of course he
on the
did.
prison's recreational yard. It's like the windmill goes over there.
Oh, you need some more clowns over here.
Dude, it's just a clown-themed miniature
just a
golf
clown.
course. Ugh.
I want all the balls to be red, like clown noses.
Yeah. Also, while in prison, he completed 16 high school courses for which he obtained his diploma in November of 1969. Oh man, it's a lot more shit happened in prison than we kind of skipped over. But also, this is a big moment in his life. While he was in prison on Christmas Day, 1969, his father died from cirrhosis of the liver. All that drinking finally got him.
Yep.
This crushed him. It's said that people witnessed him fall to the floor sobbing. He wanted more than anything to go to his father's funeral, and he begged the prison to allow him to temporarily leave to go to his father's funeral, to which they denied him access to do so. Once after getting off after the 18 months on good behavior, he immediately returned to Chicago to live with his mother, where he became a short order cook. So all that cooking in prison paid off.
Boom. And he has a diploma now. So
He's got a diploma.
Moving
Things are looking up. And with the help from his mother financially, he would buy a house in Norwood Park Township, 8213 West Somerdale Avenue. That house would become infamous later on.
That's right.
On February 12th, 1971, less than a year out of prison, Gacy was charged with sexually assaulting a teenage boy. He lured him into his car at a bus terminal and had driven him to his home and attempted to basically force sex onto the kid. Now, the kid reported this. The problem was the kid didn't appear to court when it came time. So Gacy got charged.
Right.
Court date came. Kid didn't show up. Guess what? He got off.
Yep.
They denied the complaint. So there's one of your moments. We've had these in the past with serial killers where it's like this would have been. I think this would have been it for Gacy.
This would have been.
He's already
10
been
years
convicted
with no parole, probably.
of sodomy on a 15-year-old, and then if this would have gone through, it's 20 to life, 25 to life.
It's funny that in like all documentaries and articles, this is just a small footnote, but this is so
Dude,
crucial.
if that kid showed up to court,
So crucial.
potentially 33 future lives would have been saved.
Yeah.
However, as it was, fate was not on that side.
We're not blaming you, kid, that didn't show up.
I am.
Oh.
Shortly after, Gacy and his mother moved into the house and he became engaged to Carol Hoff, a divorcee with 2 young daughters. This is someone that he knew from childhood. They were childhood friends. They were always friends, and that was the kind of marriage it was. There was no passion. They were just like good partners almost. Like he was a good father to her 2 daughters.
Yeah.
They just got along well, I guess, and it was
Yeah. And then she kind of saw him as financial stability.
Yes.
So it helped her out a lot.
Yeah. Seemed like his marriages, he looked for someone that just fit the criteria for what his image wanted, and now he got to be like a good father to 2 kids. And
Right. And
it
he got
worked
to
out
be a
for her, it worked out
provider.
for him, but there was no lust there, I don't think, ever.
Right.
Right before the wedding, Gacy had another close call with the law after impersonating a police officer, picking up a young teen and forcing him into oral sex. The boy blackmailed Gacy into an attempt to get money, which resulted in that case getting thrown out.
Oh my God. Kid.
Yeah, so leading up to the trial, another thing
my
happens
gosh.
that gets him off yet again. So we got 2 back-to-back where he's pushing his fucking luck, man.
Yeah,
like he
he
just
is.
got out. He got lucky that he didn't have to stay for 10 years in
Yep.
prison, and now he's just right back at it.
Yep.
And that was something that he would always do. And this was like, I don't know if this is where he started doing this, was around this time, but later on when he would pick up teenage boys, I think a lot of time it was proven that he would use an unmarked car, and he had a spotlight.
Well,
he would shine the spotlight on him, and he would pretend to be a police
He
officer.
had
He had
what
a badge.
looked like a Chevy Caprice, which is what they used then. And then it had the spot. It was all black.
Yeah.
No hubcaps. And then it had the spotlights on each side.
And so on a dark night, he would pull up in an alley, spotlight you, come out, get against the wall, handcuff you, put you in the car.
Yep.
Or maybe if you cooperate, he wouldn't even handcuff you. He'd wait till you get back to the house to do the handcuff trick on you. Around this time, Gacy quit his job as a cook and started his own construction business. PDM Contractors stood for painting, decorating, and maintenance. Real clever.
Yeah.
And this is like a way for him to farm young boys,
Exactly.
have them around all the time. I don't know. I mean, it was also a business venture. It made a lot of money. I saw a thing that said he made like the equivalent of $200K per year in today's dollars.
Yeah. Wow.
Which is pretty damn
That's
solid.
good. And he said that he hired these young boys because it kept costs down. 15, 16-year-olds aren't looking to make a whole lot of money. If he paid them $5 an hour, they were just ecstatic.
Was his going rate.
Right. They're making $250 working at grocery stores. So, yeah, they're living high on the hog as a 15, 16-year-old working for him.
Yeah, and it wasn't long after that he would kill for the first time. On January 2nd, 1972, Gacy picked up a 16-year-old named Timothy Jack McCoy from Chicago's Greyhound bus terminal. Gacy had sex with him, and in the morning, I guess they had a good time, and in the morning, this is an interesting story. I know you love this story, so I'll let you tell it.
Well, in the morning, so he wakes to see the boy coming in the room with a knife.
Right.
And he immediately thinks the worst. He thinks that he's like a scam artist or he's a hustler and he's going to try and kill him.
Right.
So he jumps up and they end up wrestling on the floor or whatnot and eventually gets the knife from him and stabs the boy in the chest multiple
And he also
times.
apparently had a stab wound on his arm as well.
He did, yeah.
And he still, he later talked about a lot of the murders that he did, and this one he swore that it was just a kind of an accident, but when it was all said and done, he got a real high from it. A quote from him in a later interview said, "That's when I realized that death was the ultimate thrill."
Right. But it was also said that the boy was just making him breakfast.
Yes,
which is an important thing to know. He just had the knife in his hand because he was using it to cook.
Hey, you want eggs?
Yeah, he's like, oh, you like them scrambled? You like them fried? I like them motherfucking over medium.
Jesus.
Yeah, and some people get mad about the way their eggs are cooked.
Yeah. No joke. His second murder, not to take it lightly.
No, I'm sorry.
Rest in peace. But it is kind of crazy to think that his first killing was just over eggs. The second murder around January 1974 was an unidentified teenage youth with medium brown curly hair, estimated between the ages of 14 and 18. Now, we already foreshadowed 33 bodies later on would be found.
Right.
He killed a lot of people. We already knew this going into John Wayne Gacy, but not all of them were ever identified. This is one of them.
Right.
His second murder. The body he would bury in the backyard, and this would be like right next to his grill, I guess. Around this time, he became active in Democratic Party politics yet again, initially offering the labor services of his PDM employees free of charge.
Right.
Weaseling his way in, trying to get power, trying to offer people things. He would go around. He was that guy, like, at the bar. He would, if someone had an issue, he'd butt in and, like, get involved and, like, resolve it for him. But I think it was just because he loved to go around telling people he knew people. He just wanted a connection for everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah. He was then appointed to serve upon the Norwood Park Township Street Lighting Committee, and we're just going to go through a list of shit that at this time he's just all the community stuff that he's getting involved in. So he's on the Norwood Park Township Street Lighting Committee. He's appointed director of Chicago's annual Polish Constitution Day Parade.
Although I don't know how prestigious that is. I mean,
hey,
it's such a small amount of people, though.
You ever been the director of a Polish constitutional parade, Michael?
I have not.
Shut
I'm a
your
big
mouth.
part Polish.
Shut your mouth.
I should have been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How dare you? Through his work with the parade, Gacy met and was photographed with Rosalind Carter, who was at the time the First Lady. And there was a lot of controversy about this photo. Obviously, he's standing with the First Lady. How did one of the most prolific serial killers during the time of his killing spree stand next to the fucking First Lady?
Yeah.
But
he's
not only that,
more famous than she is, so really she's lucky to stand with him.
Right. Well, I guess it's all in how you look at it. He was also wearing a pin, a service pin.
Yeah.
That was basically indication of Secret Service clearance.
Oh, come on. He
So-
probably made that in his garage. Come on.
He was a crafty guy.
Man. Impersonating police officer, impersonating Secret Service.
Right.
Get this guy out of here.
Yeah. He was also, during this time, hosting massive parties at his house, up to 400 people for holidays. They were almost all dress-up parties.
Of course.
And that's where
It gets creepy.
it gets creepy. This is how he became the clown killer, how he became known as a clown killer. It was during this time that he became registered as a clown, and
You have to register yourself as a clown?
Yeah, he was the real deal, man. He also had a clown badge.
Oh my gosh.
He would go by Pogo the Clown or Patches the Clown, depends on how you look at it.
Right.
As a clown, he would go around to like children's hospitals, and he would entertain at parties,
Rodeos.
No, not rodeos.
I wish he would have.
He would regularly perform at fundraising events as well, parades. PDM, let's talk a little bit more about that. The contractors consisted, as we talked, young boys, mainly high school students and young men, One of them was a boy named Anthony Antonucci, and Antonucci was 15 years old. Gacy did this trick, which he liked to do and which he used a lot, which was to try and show you like a clown trick with handcuffs. And it sometimes he would even put them on his own wrists, turn around for just a second, and all of a sudden he'd come back and he'd be swinging the handcuffs on his finger. He would do this often. He would show them in the front, and then he would even do it from behind. He would undo the things. But basically, he had a hiding spot between his fingers with this tiny little key that he would bring out, boom, undo them. And so he convinced them. He's like, well, let me put them on you, and I'll show you how it works.
Exactly.
Put the handcuffs on, and then he would call them stupid, and that's where it would start, typically.
Stupid.
Yeah. So he tried that on Antonucci. He actually got the handcuffs on Anthony Antonucci and left the room. And when he came back, Anthony Antonucci had pulled his own magic trick and gotten him off. I guess
Boom.
the left wrist was too loose as far as Gacy didn't tighten him down enough, and he was able to slip his hand out.
Who's the Copperfield now, bitch?
Right. And he picked the wrong guy to not tighten the handcuffs on because Antonucci was a wrestler. Antonucci fucking turned the tables on him.
That's right.
He wrestled down Gacy, got the handcuffs on him.
Oh.
Didn't kill him, though. He should have killed him.
Oh.
That would have saved a lot of lives,
Yeah.
as we talked about.
Right.
He would end up leaving the next day, quitting his job.
Oh, really? I wonder why.
Yeah.
Couldn't work that out, man. You know, people just can't work through workplace issues nowadays.
I know. Sometimes your boss is a little cranky. Sometimes he handcuffs you.
Right.
And
suck it up. You know, go fill the water cooler and get back to work.
Right. 1 week later, on July 29th, 1975, Gacy killed 17-year-old employee John Butkovich. And it's kind of interesting how this went down because Butkovich had actually been having a dispute with John Gacy over money. He didn't feel that he'd been paid a certain amount of. He felt as though Gacy owed him a couple $100s for work that he had done.
Right.
Gacy disagreed. And
also,
what were you
I
saying?
was going to say also, Butkovich was really close with his family, like in an odd way. Like his wife even called John Butkovich Little John. It was like Little John and Big John, you know.
Right.
Like that's how much he was around. He played with his kids and everything.
Yeah, and it had gotten to the point where Butkovich actually brought some of his friends with him over to Gacy's house and confronted him and was planning on beating Gacy up if he didn't give him the money.
Right.
But Gacy, being the salesman that he is.
Oh, the suave.
Yeah. Somehow it ended up going in the house and like smoking joints together and like it was all fine again.
And they're like, he's like, hey, I know you want to punch me, but
let's have a joint first.
yeah, I got some weed. Gets into that kind of thing.
Right. So I think Gacy still held a grudge, obviously, about all this money talk, and he wasn't going to pay him. And he went cruising later that night, Gacy did, and happened to see John Butkovich walking down the street by himself. Talked him into getting into the car to go back to the house to talk about it. Once there, he pulled the handcuff trick on him and the rope trick. Now, the rope trick was a Gacy...
Rope trick's a new one.
It was very William Bonin, very much. It was basically his homemade tourniquet. He would use a stick with a rope, and there was 2 holes where the rope would go on each end, and you would put this rope over your head once you were in handcuffs, twist it 2 or 3 times, he says, and that was all it would take. And the stick would actually hold in place once he twisted it, the amount. And the boy would struggle, and the more you'd struggle, the tighter it would get, and
that's it.
It didn't take long, So that's what happened to Butkovich. He would end up under Gacy's garage floor, actually.
He's the only one that ended up in the garage.
Yeah,
correctly?
there was one in the garage, one in the yard, and then I believe one in the front. But we'll get to that. Not long after this, Gacy would end up getting his second divorce. It was based on mutual consent. They weren't having sex anymore, as we had mentioned. It was loveless, and Gacy was bringing home more and more boys. She would watch. She would watch him pull in and go to his garage with these young boys through the window. I mean, while she's getting done,
she knows what's going on.
Yeah, the neighborhood even knew. Like, people knew. You know, it's like later on the media tried to paint Gacy as like, you never would have known. Like, this is the last person. The Pope. One of the documentaries I watched.
Except everybody knew.
You would have believed that the Pope killed these boys before John Gacy. I honestly don't think. I don't think the people that knew him felt that way. I think they thought he was kind of creepy, but they were like, but he's harmless. He's creepy, but he's harmless. You know, I feel like. What are you saying?
I was gonna say I don't think the Catholic Pope is the best comparison right now.
Oh yeah. Well,
allegedly.
Right. So they would end up getting divorced, and this is where the cruising years would start. That's a term he liked to use. From 1976 to 1978, these were the years where it increased. Shortly after his second divorce, so he's on the prowl now. He's got his own house.
Yeah.
and no wife there. He can bring back these young boys to his house. And,
Right.
Another thing is he would drive that car you talked about that looked unmarked, black, all black car. He drove it like a maniac because Gacy knew people.
He was important.
He knew people. And in his mind, he was very...
I know cops.
No one's going to do anything.
I'm a fake cop in my spare time.
Right. In July of 1976, Gacy employed an 18-year-old named David Cram. Cram moved in with Gacy shortly after.
Oh, mistake.
Back at Gacy's house, it's important to note, he liked to have these parties there, and he was like, he liked to say, I'm very liberal-minded. He liked
Sexually.
He kept like a fun
That's what
house.
he would say, yeah.
Yeah. And he had like a bar and a pool
Teenager's
table.
paradise.
Exactly. And he
Yeah.
loved these teenage boys could always come hang out if they had a dispute with their parents.
Yep.
It was a no parent zone is what he liked to call it.
Of course it was.
Right. And so he would convince David Cram to start living with him. This was in the scene from the movie that I watched, Gacy. I forgot to mention that. I watched the actual film named Gacy. Pretty good. Good movie. And this scene was recreated where Cram was, talking to his girlfriend, considering moving in with Gacy because it's like it's a perfect hangout. His dad's off his back. He's got a pool table and a full bar.
Right.
Gacy seems fine enough until shortly after moving in, when you come home one night to drunken John Gacy in his clown outfit, pestering you and poking at you and basically tricking you into putting on handcuffs and then swinging you around by your hands, saying, "I'm going to rape you." This is what happened to David Cram one night. It sounds
I didn't know he was swinging around by the hands. I'm sorry, that caught me by surprise.
Yes, it's hard not to laugh because it sounds so fucking silly.
It does.
And actually,
I'm just picturing him in his clown costume.
We actually can kind of laugh on this one because Cram was another
Cram got
kid
away.
that you don't mess with. Yeah. Cram actually did not get raped. He was able to fight with John Gacy and get the handcuffs. He got the key to the handcuff from Gacy.
Yeah.
Uncuffed himself and continued to live with Gacy for another month because
Well, hey, let bygones be bygones.
we talked about sometimes you come home, your roommate's a little grumpy. It's
Right. Proposition is that he'll rape you.
yeah,
And
wearing
you're
a clown
like,
outfit.
Come on, bro. And you're like, all right, you want to get some beers?
Exactly. I'm gonna go to bed.
I'm just gonna go to bed.
You'll be in the next room over there.
You stay in your room and I'll stay in mine.
I'm sure you won't try to do that again.
Right.
All right. So during the cruising years, which is where we're at right now, he's killing on a very frequent basis. At one point, up to every 2 weeks, he's killing young boys that he's picking up on the street.
Right.
Whether he's just enticing them in for sexual acts or if he's pretending to be a police officer.
Exactly.
However he's doing it, and he's beginning to put these bodies down in his crawl space.
Yep. And we're not going through each one of these because they're all very similar. This guy had a system that worked for him. I guess, kind of don't fix it if it ain't broke kind of scenario.
Right.
It's the same deal.
Yeah.
So police act as a police officer, trick the boy into the car, and then later proposition him for sex, or you just want to get back to my house, hang out,
Get the handcuffs
get
on
the
'em.
handcuffs, get the rope.
They're drinking, they're vulnerable.
Yeah.
You show them your little trick. His trick apparently was impressive, the way he could get those handcuffs off so quick, and they didn't know he had the key because he would show them his hands with nothing.
Right.
And so, you can see yourself, if he seems like a nice enough guy and he's showing you this trick, he already put the handcuffs on himself, and then next thing you know, he's putting a rope around your neck.
Right.
And in 76, April, Daryl Sampson would be killed and end up in his crawl space. Randall Raffett, 15, would end up in the crawl space in 76. Samuel Stapleton, 1976, he ended up in the crawl space. He was 14. Michael Bonin, 17, 1976, ended up in the crawl space. William Carroll, crawl space. Rick Johnston, Kenneth Parker, William Bundy, Gregory Godzik, who was an employee of his.
Right.
John Sizik, John Prestige, Matthew Bowman. You get the point. We go on and on. There's whole pages of them, all these bodies in the crawl space. And it would get so bad that he would actually start using his employees to dig holes for him in the crawl space. He would actually put sticks in place down where there were already bodies and say, only dig between these sticks.
Exactly.
And he was very adamant about it. Only dig between these sticks.
Yeah, and he's claimed it was for draining. Because his property would soak up a lot of moisture underneath the house.
Right.
So, which is also important to know that there was always also like a foul odor always coming from down underneath there. So if you dug
his
these
wife
trenches,
had already been before they got divorced. He had already had a body down there, and she was already complaining about it.
But if you dug those trenches, it could air out a little better.
Yeah.
Too. That was his excuse.
Yeah. It was supposedly just a ridiculous odor coming up, like to a point where in the movie it portrayed his neighbors coming over, pounding on the door, bitching at them about the smell coming over to their properties.
Oh,
It was that. But you can imagine, we're talking a bunch of bodies.
You don't think that was a Hollywood exaggeration?
It could have been.
I think it was.
Yeah. Well,
we'll just write that off.
Speculation. Overruled. Well, we're going to fast forward a little bit to October of 1976. 19-year-old employee of PDM Contractors, William Bundy. We mentioned his name. He ended up in the crawl space. He disappeared after informing his family that he was going to attend a party. And now these were not all... This is another case where you hear he killed a bunch of young boys. They were male prostitutes, whatever.
Right.
And then in the end, it was one good kid that got him cut. A lot of these kids, they were in touch with their families.
Yeah. They were good kids. They were working. They were hardworking kids trying to just, get ahead.
One of them that he killed had taxes laid out in his apartment, like he was in the middle of doing his taxes. Like, does that sound like someone who's just a runaway?
That sounds like someone more grown up than me.
Right. Michael has his wife do it. Bundy would not end up making it to the party. He would be strangled and buried in the crawl space, buried actually directly beneath Gacy's master bedroom. In December 1976, another person we mentioned on the list, 17-year-old Gregory Godzik, he disappeared after being last seen by his girlfriend outside of her house, having driven her home following a date. So these kids are not just like runaways that haven't been seen by anyone for months. They've got lives, and he's taking them from them and then just throwing them under his house like they'll never be seen again. No one's ever going to come bother me.
And so many of these kids were just written off as runaways.
Right.
It's kind of surprising.
Family members and friends were going to the police at this time and reporting their loved ones missing, and the police, were not doing their due diligence. They were kind of writing it off, like you said, as it's another runaway. There's cities filled with groups of these kids that run away from their parents' home and,
Well, they're taking a look at these kids, and if they got like one little faulting thing in their life, then they're like, oh, well, you could have ran away.
Right. That's what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it really, if they had looked into it, they probably would have found a lot of times a link here between Gacy.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Employing them, then them coming up missing. There's been several of them already that we've talked about. Godzik had actually only worked for PDM for 3 weeks as well before he disappeared. On January 20th, 1977, John Cizik was a 19-year-old acquaintance of Butkovich and of Godzik and Gacy. So I guess they were all probably hanging out back at Gacy's little bachelor pad. Cizik disappeared. He was lured into Gacy's house on the pretext of selling his Plymouth Satellite to Gacy. So Gacy said he wanted to buy his car. Got him back there. The salesman kicked in. His class ring would end up being found along with a portable Motorola TV. Those would be found in Gacy's bedroom by the police later on. And his house was filled with just merchandise from these kids.
Wallets, IDs,
watches,
all kinds of stuff.
Gacy also, instead of buying the car, he just took it because he had killed him. And he would end up selling that to Michael Rossi, his employee, who's been living with him now for a while.
Right.
It's amazing how well Michael Rossi seemed to just like skate through with Gacy. I don't know what the difference was with him than the other kids, because Michael Rossi worked for him, lived with him.
I know. He was very close, but maybe he liked him too much or didn't like him enough.
I don't know. Maybe he was too good for business. Maybe it was really Rossi that was running everything for Gacy as he went around doing his creepy bullshit.
Yeah, maybe.
More on the identified victims that would be later found in the crawl space: Matthew Bowman, Robert Gilroy. I'm just trying to put it in your head how many real people this were that he killed. John Mowry, Russell Nelson, Robert Winch, Tommy Boyling, David Talsma, William Kindred, Timothy O'Rourke, Frank Landgren, James Mazzara.
Well, those last three
on and on.
Were found actually in the Des Plaines River.
Yeah, that's what happened eventually. Is he would end up resorting to the crawl space got so full of bodies there was no more square footage to bury any of them.
Exactly.
There was some on top of each other, and the stench was so unbearable that like even when he would have his employees go down there, they're trying not to vomit the whole time. And it was. There's pictures you can look up his crawl space that we'll get more into that.
Right.
In March of 1978, Gacy lured a 26-year-old named Jeffrey Rignall into his car. Upon entering the car, the young man was chloroformed and driven to the house of Gacy, back to his creepy-ass pad.
Yep.
There, he was raped, tortured, and
with various
sodomized with different instruments, including candles, whips, and repeatedly chloroformed.
Yeah, he said like every time he woke up, it was just rag to the face.
Right.
Rag to the face.
Rignall would live to tell the story. He was actually left on the steps at a park And the next morning, he was all hazy, like, what the hell happened? Obviously, he felt as though he had been sexually assaulted. He would end up going to the police, and he was able to retrace. Before going to the police, he retraced his steps as much as he could remember, like little glimmers here and there of memory of that night. He remembered what Gacy's car looked like. So he basically went around the neighborhood, the area of where he thought he'd been driven that night, and just basically looked for a vehicle like that. And he found it. He found what he believed to truly be the car, wrote down the license plate, found out who lived there, and reported it to the police. The police actually got on the case then at that point. They issued a warrant, and Gacy was arrested on July 15th. He was facing an impending trial for a battery charge. And around this time, things are starting to stack against him, because this is when this is the final murder we're going to get to here. This is the one that ends up taking him down. He picked the wrong kid this time. On December 11th, 1978, a boy named Robert Peast worked at a grocery store called Nissan Pharmacy. He was a great student. He had good parents. He was a gymnast in high school, super hard worker.
Yeah, he was.
At the time, he was saving to buy a Jeep. That was his big goal.
Yeah.
He was about
Very
to turn
motivated.
He was about to turn 16, and before he turned 16, he wanted to have a Jeep.
Exactly. Who doesn't?
Yeah. And it just so happened that Gacy was going to Nissan Pharmacy that day to basically do a bid contracting bid for some work that needed to be done at the pharmacy.
Right.
Peast was working when Gacy was there. Gacy had his eye on him. Peast basically wanted a job that paid more so he could get his Jeep faster.
Yeah, and Gacy paid almost twice what he was making.
Right. He'd overheard.
Example, yeah.
He was busy working while Gacy was there, but he'd overheard Gacy talking to someone at the store mentioning that his employees got paid $5 an hour, which was actually twice.
Which Gacy was probably looking at him. My employees make $5 an hour.
But he goes over the microphone. Give me that. He goes to the checker. $5 an hour. Yeah.
Cashier's like, sir, you can't do that.
Right.
You can't.
Peast. But this is kind of crazy how this happened. So Gacy bids the thing.
Right.
He leaves. He's halfway
It's
home.
like 10 miles away from his house, too.
Yeah, he's halfway home from doing the bid, driving like a maniac like he does,
Right.
and he realizes that he had forgotten his notepad, with all his business ledger, basically. He had left it back at the grocery store.
Yep.
And by a crazy twist of fate, he went back to the grocery store, and Rob Peast happened to be going through the parking lot.
Yep, taking out some trash.
Yeah, Gacy approached him. Rob mentioned that he had overheard a $5 an hour job and he would love to have it. And Gacy asked him if he would meet him after his shift. Gacy said, I'll hang around until after your shift and we can talk about that job or whatever.
Right.
Just meet me out here. And so he's like, all right. So basically every night, Rob Peast's mom would come pick him up from work.
Right.
And, it was actually her birthday that night as well.
And she was there at the store during all this.
Yeah, so she gets to the store to pick him up. And he tells his mom, I'm going to go talk to this guy about a job. Yeah. And she says, okay, I'll be walking around the store. Rob goes out, talks to Gacy in the parking lot, and his salesman kicks in. And once again, somehow he convinces Peast to get in the truck with him, and he's got to go back to the house. Like, we got to go back to my house. I've got papers you can sign, and then you got the job.
Right.
And he's so excited, Rob Peast being, about getting this job that pays twice as much. And he's thinking about how fast he can get this Jeep. And he's telling Gacy, like, it's my mom's birthday. I really, can we do this another time? And
right.
Like,
Gacy sold it, man.
Just convinced him the whole time.
He was like, look, he's like,
do you want the job or not? It's $5 an hour. Come back to my house. Like, basically threatening him not to get.
I mean, he pulled out a little more
charm
than that. He was like, how happy would your mom be if you came home making twice what you were making? How responsible would that look for her? That's a real gift right there.
Yeah.
He really sold this shit.
And he convinced him that it was only going to be like quick 30, 40 minutes. We'd be back. We'll get you the paperwork and you'll basically be a shoo-in. You got the job.
Yep.
I saw how hard you were working.
Exactly.
And so they get back to the house and that's where he pulls the handcuffs and the rope trick. Yep. And initially he had put the handcuffs on him. He had tricked him into the handcuffs and Rob started crying, and Gacy had a moment of, I guess, sympathy for him.
Maybe
a little bit of a heart for a second, and actually took the handcuffs off. And Rob was like, "Man, you scared me. I thought you were gonna kill me." And he's like, "No." And they start heading towards the door to go back to drop him off at his mom's house for the birthday. And as Rob is got his hand on the door to leave, Gacy comes up with the rope from behind and strangles him.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. But as we alluded to, this was the wrong boy. This boy was, there was, as far as the police standpoint, when the parents of Rob Peast, he also had very determined parents. So once their kid didn't come home that night on his mom's birthday, the whole family, something's not right here. This is not like our son to do this.
Exactly.
And they knew, his mom had known who had been last seen with him, or Rob was smart enough to say, I'm meeting a guy, his business is called PDM Contracting.
Yep, that's right. And it took someone like Robert Peast to finally get the cops' attention. It had to be somebody perfect, somebody driven, somebody with a future, and not necessarily saying these other boys didn't, but apparently the cops didn't think so. They weren't really. I mean, these boys must have had things in their lives that made them consider that they would just be runaways.
Right.
Which is hard to believe that many boys, but
yeah. So when Peace's family went to the police and reported him, I guess the police that took the report and had to relay that to the detectives.
Right.
He looked at it and he's like, "This just doesn't scream to me as a case of runaway. I'm looking at everything here. I'm seeing how determined his parents are. I'm seeing that they're being genuine by telling me that our boy would never do this."
Yeah.
And they would actually kind of push that along to the detectives, like, "Look, I think you need to look more into this one. This isn't your normal, kid comes up missing case in this town."
Right. And it didn't take much convincing. Once he met the family, he was like, okay, whoa.
Exactly.
There's something going on here.
Yeah, so the police would, the family would inform them that they believe John Wayne Gacy may be the person. And that night, actually, Robert Peace's father would actually call and leave a voicemail on Gacy's phone at his house.
Yeah.
They were that fast, right on to him.
Yep.
And the police would look into Gacy, and that's when they actually found out, finally, because look, there were times throughout this whole killing spree that he was doing where they were seeing business associates of him come up missing.
Yeah.
And they had gone out and talked to him a couple times. We don't want to act like the police were completely head in the sand here.
Right.
They did go out there and talk to him, but basically Gacy would deny it completely and say, "No, man, he took off. He left town.
Right.
I gave him his last check and he was gone."
Yeah.
And the police would go, "All right, okay. We got no evidence here.
Yeah.
The body's gone. No one's found the body. Okay." And Gacy was charming and probably freaking had a beer with them and completely convinced them that he had nothing to do with it.
Right.
However, this one is another link here where Gacy was supposedly the last one seen with this boy, or supposed to have been the last one seen.
Right.
And the boy's gone. And so the police end up contacting him, asking him to come in. But he had also had a weird coincidence happen where the same night he killed Rob Peast, his uncle died. And so he's running around with family. He doesn't even get the body down in the crawl space. The body's up in the attic. And the police are on his case. He ends up taking the body. He makes an appointment to meet with the appointment. You shouldn't. Yeah. It should be come in now. We need to talk about this. But he's John Gacy, so he convinces him. I can't talk now. I'll come in. Say 10:30 tonight.
Yeah.
And so he makes an agreement that he's going to come in and talk, and he's going to tell his side or whatever.
Exactly.
But in the meantime, he's got to get rid of Rob Peace's body. So he puts Rob in the trunk of his car, and he's going to dump his body off on the way to go meet with the police and talk about the fact that he has nothing to do with this.
The Des Plaines River.
The Des Plaines. So he goes to a bridge, and this is freaking March in Chicago. It's snow everywhere.
Right.
And he dumps the body off the bridge, and he's driving to the police station to make his statements, and driving like a maniac in the snow, and he actually loses control of his car and wrecks, and spends hours trying to get his car out in the mud, and ends up actually getting towed.
He even tried the old spare trick, take the spare tire out. Some of you guys live up north, you know what I'm talking about. Put the spare tire underneath the back tire to get some traction.
Yep.
Didn't work.
I don't know what you're talking about, but I'll go with it.
Yeah.
He ends up showing up to the police station, not at 10:30 like he'd said, but about 3 a.m. in the morning.
Right.
Obviously, the police are not waiting around for him anymore, but it is noted that he's covered in mud, which doesn't look good. If you're maybe suspected in a missing boy coming up, and you show up like 5 hours late and you're covered in mud, that doesn't look good.
No, not at all.
Not at all. But he nonetheless, he tells them, "Okay, the police aren't here. I'll come back in the morning."
Right.
So he comes back, and he's doing his whole Gacy spiel, denying everything. But the police they've had it with his bullshit. They've looked up into his history. They've seen that he had a sodomy charge in Iowa, and where he should have spent 10 years, but he got off in 18 months. And they're seeing now links between all of these boys that work for him that have been missing. They're finding these because also important to note that around this time, his buddy, his roommate, his employee, Michael Rossi, is calling the police as well and discussing with them the fact that he thinks it's weird that guys that he used to work with for
Right.
PDM contracting, all of a sudden came up missing.
And didn't Cram get picked up for questioning as well?
Yes.
And Cram
So
told
people are
them,
talking as well during this time.
Yeah, it's funny because Cram told them about like all the IDs. Like one of the questions they asked him
Yeah.
was like, "Did you ever see anything odd around
"Hey,
Gacy's
how-
house?" And he's like, "He had a bunch of wallets."
Right. Guys that I
bunch
used to
of-
know and they're gone.
But I'd never seen him before. Never seen him again.
right.
But yeah, he would ask to use the IDs of the people, and he's like, "Oh no, you can't use those. Those
Right.
people are deceased."
There's
He
one.
wouldn't even lie about it. He's like, "Those people are deceased."
Yeah, there's one scene in the movie Gacy that I watched, the theatrical movie, and there's one scene where the guy that's living with him, it might have been Michael Rossi, the guy playing him in the movie, was late for work one morning, and basically Gacy takes out this box filled with watches, and it's because Michael had made the excuse that his watch was broken, and that's why he was late to work. So he goes, "Come here," brings him into his little bar area, and he's got a box filled with watches, and he's like, "Pick one, pick one."
They don't want him back. Trust me.
Yeah. So as we said, the police aren't buying it. They're pretty damn sure. I'd honestly say, like, from what I could tell from the book that we read, the police knew this motherfucker.
The lead
is-
detectives were convinced at this time.
Yeah.
They're like, "This is our guy. We just got to figure out how we're going to prove it."
Right. We got to get into his house.
Exactly.
And so they obtain a search warrant based off of the previous sodomy charge and the fact that he was the last person to be seen with a boy that is currently missing. So they go to his house, and some of the stuff they found in the house we talked a little bit about. They found IDs, they found rings, watches, handcuffs, a 2x4 with holes drilled in the ends, a syringe, clothing too small to fit him, 2 pistols, and a photo receipt from the pharmacy where Robert Priest had worked. Pieced. So they didn't really think much of it when they found this. They found like a photo receipt to pick up photos from the photo development department.
As far as what they knew about the receipt now, it really didn't mean anything.
It didn't mean
Not
anything.
yet.
They didn't know the link yet. They didn't know that
Exactly.
that was Robert Piest's property, technically.
Right.
The way it turned out was basically that receipt was in his jacket pocket because a girl that he worked with was wearing his jacket. He was that kind of guy. If she was cold, he was going to let her borrow his jacket.
Yeah.
And she had some tickets that she wanted to print. She put them in his pocket, even though she didn't need that. She just wanted a reason to talk to him.
Right, because she had a crush on Robert.
Yeah. She just wanted that in. The police were convinced now, even further, that they were correct and that this guy was involved in some shady shit, that he was definitely involved in Robbie coming up missing,
Yep.
Rob Piest. And so they would assign 2-man surveillance teams to follow him everywhere he went. And if he's doing shady shit, they're going to see it. They're going to catch him in the act.
Yeah.
And this is one of my favorite parts about the Gacy story is this is so like something only he could do. You know,
for sure.
He must have been a charming bastard, or just like make you comfortable to be around with his stupid little jokes, and it's just like like we talked about how he's just a frumpy little man.
He turned this surveillance team into his own personal posse.
Yeah,
He's
so
riding around, like, "This is my bodyguard."
So they're clashing at first. He's trying to avoid them,
Yeah.
like he's driving like a maniac, and you try to catch him off guard as they were sitting out in front of his house. He tried to pull out of his driveway and just take off so fast.
Right. And keep in mind, they're not. He can pretty much get away with any misdemeanor shit right now.
They're not pulling him over for these
Exactly.
little minor infractions. They
Right.
want to get him for the real deal.
Exactly.
And so they're letting it go. But it just somehow, some way, he's Gacy, and he ends up hanging out with these guys that were basically supposed to be watching him.
He's like buying them drinks and shit.
Yeah, they're watching him, but they're going to dinner together, hanging out, drinking together.
Right.
It's ridiculous. He's actually having them over to his house for dinner, which ends up costing him because on one of these nights when he has them over for dinner, he cooks fish, of course, because that's the stinkiest thing that can try and disguise the scent of his house.
Right.
And one of the detectives goes to take a leak in his bathroom, and the furnace kicks on, and it kicks up a smell, which he, as someone who's been in the police field for a long time,
Right.
recognizes only to be a rotting corpse of a human being. And so that begins,
The reasoning for another search warrant,
part of why. I mean, they already,
which is a really bad reason for a search warrant, honestly.
I smelled something that smelled like
Yeah.
a body.
That's pretty crazy. You could see how the law enforcement and the judges and everything were on that side
Right.
of the story. Like they were convinced this is the guy.
Right.
Because you don't give a search warrant for a foul odor.
Yeah.
Like that I don't think that happens
Well,
very
that
often.
and also the fact that they'd been talking to Michael Rossi, and Michael Rossi told the police. So you got a combination of things. It's not
Yeah.
just the cop smelling what he thought was bodies.
But that was the main basis of this.
But Michael Rossi had also told them that he had dug holes underneath down in the crawl space.
Yeah.
For Gacy, and so that
Cram
also
did too, didn't he?
Yeah, so they're hearing from
Yeah.
people that have been around Gacy a lot that he's making and employees that he's making them dig holes down there. So that's
Right.
getting their mind going like, well, what's down there? Why are they digging holes down in the crawl space?
Yeah.
So that combined with the cop smelling what he was sure to be human flesh rotting, started the whole process of them getting another search warrant to search underneath the house.
Right.
And so Gacy catches wind that they're on to a second search warrant, and it's coming. It's imminent. It's coming very soon, and he knows that it's all coming to an end.
Right.
And he would end up going. This is late December. We're coming up on Christmas of '78. He would go one night and convince his attorneys, even though it's Christmas time, to come in. He wants to tell them something, and they're like, "Gacy, come on, dude, it's Christmas. I just had a kid." His lawyer's not digging it.
And he's late for this appointment as well.
Yeah, he shows up late. Freaking attorneys had it. But that would be one of the craziest nights of his life as Gacy would end up spilling the beans, telling him everything, telling him drunkenly. He asked for some whiskey and just chugged like the equivalent of like 2 beers worth of whiskey.
Yeah.
And then had a drunken just tirade about how he had killed 30 people, young boys, and they were under his crawl space. And of course
just telling the story like a camping trip too.
Yeah.
Like it's not some big scene. Like he's just chilling.
He never seemed to, that's one thing that Amarante would talk about in the book a lot, is that he never seemed to grasp how serious what he was saying was, or like the situation, like even in court when he was on trial for these murders, he was just kind of like, looked like he was watching a TV show on somebody else's trial, like not him. It wasn't about him.
Yeah.
Very strange.
Did not get him flustered at all.
He would also tell his defenders that he had an evil alias by the name of Jack Hanley, which was actually doing the murders. It wasn't John Gacy, it was Jack Hanley.
Which was based on a past boss that he had.
Really?
Yeah, do you know that?
No, I didn't know
that. He based it on one of his past bosses at working at when he was a cook, like when he was first out of prison, I think, or something like that. Like he really looked up to this guy. Mm-hmm. And he made up this alter ego for him, where he was like a detective and fighting like real high profile crimes and stuff.
Or killing young boys.
No, not that. He took that on his own. He actually looked up to his boss.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then why did he name himself that as he was killing kids? I
don't know.
That's Gacy for you.
That's right.
And so he tells them everything. And the next day he would go on a farewell tour. He had kind of alluded to his lawyers during the confession that it didn't matter because he was going to take care of this himself.
Yeah.
He was going to solve the issue. It was basically, he just kept saying.
Right. He wanted to stay in control of the situation, just like we've seen with serial killer after serial killer.
Right.
It's like once they get to the end, they still want control.
Right.
If they're going to go down, they're going to go down their way.
So he was planning to kill himself, and the next day he went on a farewell tour, went around everyone he viewed as a friend.
Everyone. Yeah.
Michael Rossi, some guy at the gas station that he always frequented. And he was driving even more erratic, apparently, like a freaking lunatic. He's driving, like, endangering everyone on the roads.
Right.
And around this time, the second search warrant is issued. I believe it was the next day after his confession.
Yep.
And that's where you see famous footage. You can see, like, people piled around Gacy's house.
So many newscasts.
As they exhume body after body, and they were just putting numbers by these corpses that were found down in there. They'd find a skeleton, and they would put just a number until later on they could get the medical examiner to identify, if they could find a match from a missing child to the body that they found. Between December 22nd and December 29th, right through the Christmas week, 27 bodies would be recovered from Gacy's property. 29 would ultimately be uncovered from his property as a whole. There was the one in the front, the one in the back, under the driveway. 3 would end up being found in the river because he would tell them where to
I think
look.
that was the last 3, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, but I think there was one.
Ran out of room.
I think there was one that he claimed to have thrown in the river that they never did find, because if you added up 29 and 3, that's 32. He had 33 that he was tried for.
Right.
He's known to have been proven to have killed 33. There was 26 in the crawl space that they had found. And then we get to the trial. So
there we go.
They find all those bodies. Obviously, he's indicted on the murder charges for those.
Yeah.
He's brought to trial on February 6, 1980. He's charged with 33 murders. And the book we read it's like 15 chapters on the whole trial. And basically the gist of it, we don't have to go into all of it, but the gist of it was his defense convinced Gacy that his only chance was to plead insanity. And they were going to spend their entire time on trial, not trying to convince the jury that he is innocent, but more that he was so crazy that he didn't have any say over whether
Right.
he did this or not. It was uncontrollable to him.
I'd like to take a second to talk about this though.
Okay.
Because like this is the whole shebang right here. Like these defense lawyers, like they believed that
Yeah.
he was insane. They're not just like going, oh well, this is the only way you're going to get off. No, these gentlemen genuinely believed that this man was insane.
What's crazy is that even the prosecution kind of acknowledged that he was crazy, but they're saying, is he crazy enough to get the insanity plea and,
Right.
and to be, instead of in prison, to be sitting in a psych ward somewhere?
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean? Like, at what point is crazy enough? I mean, it's pretty crazy to kill 30 people regardless. A normal person doesn't do that.
Right.
But was he in full awareness of what he was doing at the time, or was it uncontrollable to where he didn't even know what happened the next day type of situation?
Exactly. And that's the way it seemed to come across. Even in private when he was with his lawyers, like when he almost had like a almost
He had a supposed heart attack at one point.
right. It was almost like he was being taken over by another person when he was telling about these murders, and then like he blacked out right afterwards. It was
Right.
almost like an overload for his brain. Like he just completely.
Well,
I
here's
know
a
he
good
was very
example.
drunk, but it's funny that he got the whole story out,
Right.
and then he blacks out, and then he wakes up, and he has no recollection that he's told him any of that shit.
Right. Well, here's a good example. After they had found all the bodies and they had arrested him and he was sitting in the jail waiting to be transferred and whatnot.
Right.
He was talking to his lawyer and he's like, I think I'm going to fake a heart attack. And his lawyer's like, don't do
Oh,
that, John.
yes,
What are you
this
doing?
is-
Don't do that.
Yeah.
And so like 20 minutes goes by and he's just got his head down in his lap and then all of a sudden he flops on the floor and he's having what looks like a seizure.
Guys, and this is not just like he's just acting, like he's having physical responses. His body is physically responding to what his brain is telling
To
him
the
to do.
point where the lawyer that he had just told that he was going to fake a heart attack still believed
He still
that
believed he was having a heart attack.
Yeah.
He was like banging on the door, screaming. He's like, call a medic, call 911.
Right.
He's like, this dude's having a heart attack. Eyes were bulging, face was blue, literally foaming at the mouth.
Yeah. That's pretty impressive acting.
Literally
He's acting.
foaming at the mouth. No.
That's my opinion. You're
You
on
think
the
he kept
opposite
some
side.
baking soda?
This whole time when I was listening to the book from Sam Amarante,
Yeah.
and he's saying, I still believe he had some kind of a physical change, and he
Yeah.
had, maybe he didn't have a heart attack, but he had some kind of self-brought on.
So you don't think that your
I
mind
think
is capable of doing that?
He was
kind of
very
shit?
manipulative, and he was very good at acting because he was fake his whole life, and he was forced to lie his whole life. Being a homosexual and being in the closet and not wanting to be that, he was forced to lie throughout his whole life.
What
and
if
he got
had
really
the-
good at that stuff?
What if he had the capability of unlocking that sort of thing, though? I mean, you've heard of people that can climb Mount Everest in shorts. Like,
right.
they can control their own body temperature. If you can control your own damn body
Well,
temperature.
regardless, do you think he was insane enough to? Do you think that he should have been given the death penalty, or do you think he should have gotten off on insanity and been locked up somewhere? Which also a part of the prosecution, they
Mm-hmm.
brought on a psychologist onto the stand and had talked to him, and he corrupted the whole jury. By the way, so he had a moment where he said, so the prosecution asked him if he gets off on insanity and he gets sent to
a psych ward or
a
whatever.
psych ward,
Yeah.
will he be retained there forever or will he get out? And
Right.
the doctor basically said, well, I mean, we can't physically, because of the Constitution, we can't physically hold him against his will if he's not incarcerated. And so there's a chance he may be able to just leave.
Right.
And
they're
that,
like, well,
the eyes of the jury, if they were
taking that chance.
right, the jury, if they're thinking any at all, like, well, maybe we'll give him insanity and then he won't be
He'll
on
get
death.
help, right.
He'll get help. All that went out the window. They go, oh, well, the idea of this guy walking the streets, I'm not cool with that.
Yeah, that's way worse.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so the defense team tried to throw this guy's thing out. They wanted a new jury after this. They wanted a whole retrial.
Yeah.
Because of what this psychologist had said on the stand that they felt corrupted the whole jury.
Right.
Which that wasn't exactly how it works. Like if he would have gotten on insanity, he was a risk to the public, which is part of what keeps you
That's right.
in a psych ward. And that, so he basically lied up there on the stand. Like Gacy wouldn't have gotten out because he is in fact a threat to the
Yeah,
public.
he would have been a high security psych ward. He would not be. Yeah.
He wouldn't be getting out. No, he'd be given some little candy pills in the morning and he'd be staring at the wall for the rest of his life.
Yeah, painting clowns and shit.
Now, I still say he should have gotten what he got because I think he was in full awareness. He covered his tracks the whole way through.
Right.
I feel like there was
Or did Jack Hanley cover his tracks?
dun, dun, dun. I feel like he premeditated just about all of them. He knew he tried his damnedest to cover everything up. He knew he was well aware of what he was doing, and he continued to do it. I think he was a piece of shit human being, and he received ultimately the jury decided that he should be killed, and that's what he gets. You know.
I don't know. I still think he was miswired from the beginning, man. I think like when I heard the story about him burying the clothes at 5 years old,
Yeah.
it just hit me weird. Like almost gave me chills, like hearing about it, because I'm like, maybe in his mind he kind of didn't mature past 5 or 7 years old as far as his id, what he wants.
Right.
You know, I don't know what word I'm looking for is, but I feel like maybe just like if an adult person comes to you and they say, you know, I'm going to shoot you in the head.
Right.
And they go get a gun and they come in there and kill you. That's first degree murder. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But you see it all the time where kids getting into their father's gun cabinet or something. They're like, hey, check this out. And they accidentally shoot their friend.
How can you
or
compare that to
something
Gacy?
No, I'm just saying, listen.
Okay.
That if you look at Gacy like a 7-year-old, you see what I'm saying? In that situation, he's acting like, oh, cool, check this out. Oh, shit, I just killed somebody. You know what I'm trying to say?
I know what you're saying, but do you believe
Almost
that?
like, to a certain extent, I kind of do. I'm
Now,
not saying
till
he's
you-
any less
to-
guilty or that he's a good person or anything. I'm just saying that.
Now, to get on board with you just for a second, for the sake of arguing, you know,
Okay.
just
I hope I'm
There-
making sense. Am I making sense?
no, totally. There was times where we talked about these people that worked for him that had run-ins with him and close calls.
Yeah.
That later talked about it, and one thing they said was that there was like it was out of nowhere, and it was just like
Right.
something snapped in him,
You
and
mean
all of a
like
sudden,
a temper tantrum?
one of them said he was actually like grunting as he was grabbing them and like manhandling him like an animal almost, like "Grr, grr," and it was
Yeah,
like something
a 7-year-old would do maybe if
Yeah.
he got pissed off at somebody. You see what I mean? And then being a clown gave him an opportunity to act youthful and playful and like a kid again.
right.
And he was attracted to younger boys. You know what I mean? Like it's like I don't know. I just feel like his brain had recessed back to like an earlier age or never passed a certain age maybe.
Also, to keep on that insanity part, 26-year-old Jeffrey Rignall, remember the guy that he put the chloroform on,
Yeah.
and molested him that night,
Right.
and left him at the park and all that. He actually on the stand was questioned by the defense and asked if he believed that he was in his right mind and he knew what he was doing, and Rignall said, "No, I don't think that was even him." On the stand, he said that.
That's what almost
said
every
he-
person that encountered him in that state said. They're
There
like,
was a guy that worked for him that was, I don't remember which one it was because there were several of them, but there was one that had worked for him for a while, and he said Gacy was like a father to him. He was great. And then
Right.
one night they were in the garage, and he bent down to get something, and Gacy hit him in the back of the head with a ball peen hammer.
Yeah.
And he was about to hit him again, and he's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" He like, you know, the kid put his hand up and like grabbed the hammer, and Gacy
Yeah.
like snapped out of it and was like, apologized and like helped him fix his head, and it's just like those are the things that
Yeah.
make me wonder,
Right?
Because like he wouldn't have been doing that for any like reason for later defense. He was
Right.
doing that because that's who he was. So
yeah.
I don't know, man. It's pretty crazy. He was described by his lawyer throughout the trial as a Jekyll and Hyde type character, where
yeah.
you know he was one thing during the day and then a completely different thing.
Yeah.
If you flip that switch.
So all in all, Gacy was convicted of 33 murders and given 12 death sentences.
Right.
That's a lot of times to die.
And that would end up making him the most prolific serial killer in the U.S. to that point. He would later be replaced by Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer.
Right?
He would end up sitting on death row in Chester, Illinois for 14 years, where life goes on. Gacy, you know, he made his way. He kept a meticulous log of every moment of every day
That is so weird.
while in prison.
And it
Like
was,
every
too.
conversation.
Everything. Everyone he talked to.
Well, how like interesting could it have been? He's in prison, like he's like, okay, I got
Right.
up, I talked to the guy next to me in the cell, and then I
I
went.
wonder how
to,
specific he was.
Right.
You know?
Farted at 2:30 a.m.
Yep. Couldn't finish my mac and cheese. Tasted
Right.
like shit again. They're not letting me cook.
Yeah. While in prison on death row, he would completely have, you know, we talked about how he had confessed to everything previously, but now
Right.
he changes his tune and he finds Christ and wants to take back everything he had done, starts making all the excuses in the world. He starts saying that his crawl space it smelled because of mildew from the water coming in.
Listen,
And-
those bones, never mind those.
Right. And
Right.
they didn't find any bodies, and the smell was just because he had a little dog that would piddle. He literally says, you know how you can imagine how much if your dog piddles and then the furnace turns on.
Piddles?
That's the word he used. This from
What
the
even
horse's
is-
mouth.
What
right?
is that?
He does tons of interviews. He's loving the attention that he gets. He also is painting up clowns and selling them at top dollar.
Oh yeah, really Van Gogh quality.
No, it was dog shit.
Oh,
Really shitty paintings.
well, art is in the beholder, Lauren.
Well, not if you talk to the family members of the victims, because they would actually have a ceremony with all of his paintings and burn them later,
Right. Yeah.
which I thought was awesome.
Yeah. There was video of that. They looked pretty
Why should he benefit from
intense.
the fact that he was a creep who killed a bunch of teenage boys?
That's true.
Like, why should he be able to make money selling paintings because of that? Because no one would buy his
man.
paintings off of merit. No one's buying them because they were great paintings. They were buying them because it's a piece of history in a sense, or like it's eerie.
Yeah,
It's eerie that the hands that strangled a bunch of boys are drawing this piece of shit clown.
Right. Right.
His execution, let's go into that, and then we'll finish out with some just round the table conversation about this whole case.
Cool.
On the morning of May 9th, 1994, Gacy was transferred to the Menard Correctional Center to Statesville Correction Center in Crest Hill to be executed. His last meal. This is always fun to hear these.
Yeah.
For his last meal, he ordered what other than a bucket of KFC.
What else would the Colonel order, Lauren?
I would be ashamed if he didn't. I mean, not ashamed.
I'd
but
get Popeyes.
I'd be very disappointed.
I get Popeyes, man.
You like Popeyes more?
Hell yeah.
I don't know if I like either of them. Popeyes chicken is the shiznit.
That's right.
So he got a bucket of KFC, a dozen fried shrimp, French fries, fresh strawberries, and a Diet Coke. You know, because you got to watch your calories when you're eating a bucket of
Hey,
fucking
listen,
KFC.
When you're about to get executed, I'd be like, "Fuck, dude, bring me that Mexican Coke, bro. I want that real sugar."
He must
Bring
just
all of
like
it."
he must just like the flavor of fucking aspartame or whatever is in that shit. Because you get a bucket of KFC and then you're gonna worry about a Diet Coke when you're about to die. It is interesting though.
Maybe he just liked the taste.
Do you think he thought he was gonna die for real, or was that part of his disorder? Because apparently,
Well, he
people,
was extremely delusional about his existence.
so someone went to him for an interview like an hour before he was gonna die. They wanted to
Right.
talk to him on the phone, and he's like, "Can I call you back in like a few hours?" And they're like,
Yeah.
no, dude, you're gonna
They're
be
like,
dead
no, John, you're gonna be dead
in about
a few
47 minutes. You will be literally dead.
You'll be literally dead.
Yeah. So you can't call me back in a few hours.
No.
It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
So,
And John was like, "Okay, well, send me an email."
right? Shoot me a DM.
Hey, could you just text me this?
Send me
I
them
don't
nudes. So we talk about his final meal. His final words, kiss my ass.
Of course they were.
Very Gacy.
Is it? I expect him to say something
Something
like
more clever?
uppity. I expect him to say something uppity.
It wasn't me.
It was no, like I don't know,
Shaggy said it best. It
something
wasn't
where
me.
he tries to be like really not theoretical. Fuck, what am I looking for? What's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know.
Like
I'm dumb.
inspiring. Like try to say something deep and inspiring.
Really?
and encouraging.
Gacy?
Yeah, I figure like he would.
I figured he'd
Because
try to
he
sell something with his last words, like try to sell some shoes. But no, kiss my ass. That's all he's got.
Of course, man. Maybe there was a hidden meaning behind it.
No,
He just wanted somebody to kiss his ass.
he's a moron.
Oh, fair enough.
His death was confirmed at 12:58 a.m. on May 10th, 1994. There was a giant party there, of course, to
Oh
celebrate.
yeah.
They call it the Gacy's Day Parade, I believe.
I'll do.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
oh, is that for real?
No,
Oh,
seriously.
you're not playing off the Macy's Day Parade?
No, I
thing?
wish I was that clever.
Well, you just lost some clever points in my
All
book.
right. No, I totally made that up, bro.
You did? Oh, okay. I believe you again.
After he was presumed dead, his brain was actually taken to be examined by a professional for abnormalities. There were no abnormalities.
Bullshit.
He had a normal brain.
Bullshit.
From
One of his
what they could see in 94.
One of the crooked crevices in his brain went straight,
Yeah.
right between the "should I do this" and "I'm gonna do it" thing.
Right? The part that says "don't kill boys," that was
Yeah.
missing.
Wow, you just went right all the way into it.
Yeah.
You're like just in case you guys aren't clever enough to get a joke, I'm just gonna throw it all out there.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I guess
Let's wrap it up. We've gotten silly.
we have.
John Wayne Gacy, it's been a good time. I'd say next to Richard Ramirez is probably the funniest, or not funniest, the funnest.
It was the funniest.
It was the funniest.
No,
it's been
Bob
a while.
Berdella was
Obviously,
one of my
some
favorites.
Obviously, some tragic shit happened. He killed a lot of young boys. We're not trying to make light of that.
No.
But he was a freaking character. Gacy, Bordella. Like, you just want to make fun of him. That's why we're laughing half the time. It's not in. We try not to be in vain of the victims, but
No, not at all. We don't take
But
that lightly.
he was a literal clown. Like, forget the makeup and like dressing up as a clown. Like, the guy was a clown as a person.
Right.
He was fake with everybody. He tried to just he cared so much about what everybody liking him and needing him, and he yet ultimately couldn't shake his own demons in the end, and that came back to bite him. And he did interviews later denying everything, and so it was sad to see in the end.
So in closing, why do you think he killed? Why do you think? I mean, I told you about his psyche that I think.
Power. I think it was power.
You think it was just power?
I think he hated.
But why did you want power?
More than anything, I think it was the fact that he was homosexual in denial, and he hated himself for that. Much like Bonin, much like Randy Kraft, much like many of the guys we've studied, Berdella.
Yeah.
Berdella was more out, but Gacy claimed the whole time that he'd say, I hate fags. I'm like the cherry pickers, fruit pickers.
I'm not a fruit picker.
He was adamant about never being homosexual. He would say, at the most, he was bisexual.
Right.
But he hated that part of himself. The true fact was that he was gay. He couldn't handle that. I mean, he grew up in a tough time to be gay. I was
just about to say,
no denying that. His dad was
another victim of the time period.
He was a victim of the time period. His dad, and to say Gacy was a victim, trust me, he's a piece of shit. But
right,
we're trying to say is that it couldn't have been easy to be him growing up. His dad was very rough on him. He was a hard time to be gay anyway.
Yeah.
And I think he grew to hate who he truly was, and he would take that out on young boys that were also gay, and kind of maybe.
Well, not necessarily all of them were gay.
No, I'm not saying that, but that's my theory.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I really think. I mean, I think there's a lot of that. Obviously, I think it's a recipe for disaster.
Right.
Either way, but I really, I don't know. I feel like I see a lot of gay men growing up that way, though, with some resentment from their fathers, especially in that time period.
Yeah.
I see that. I feel like that happened a lot. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to speak for anybody, but I feel like if you were a gay male growing up in that time period, it was very rough for you.
Right.
And so for him to kill 33 people at least,
right,
I feel like there's something else. That's why I just keep going back to that.
It was compulsive, for sure.
I go back to that miswiring, man. It's just like something.
I think once he killed the first guy with the knife, the guy that was making him breakfast, it triggered something for sure, and he liked it. He liked the power of it and the control, and he couldn't stop after that. I think it was implanted in his brain. He was going to do this, and it was the ultimate thrill, as he said, coming from his own words. It was the ultimate thrill, and he loved power, man.
What is a more powerful thing, man, than getting breakfast in bed?
I agree 100%.
Do you?
And with that, let's put a bow on it.
Let's wrap it up.
Pun intended.
Yeah.
John Wayne Gacy, because clowns wear bows, don't they?
Oh my God, that's a stretch.
All right, guys, welcome back to the present. Hope you guys enjoyed that little blast from the past there. That's something that we're going to be regularly doing now. So starting with the oldest to newest, once a month on our off week, we're going to start releasing these old Patreon episodes. I think 2 years old is fair. I think that's an ample time to wait. I think if you're still a freeloader after 2 years, I think you deserve it. You deserve to hear what it sounds like, You're like those people that just wait for the whole season to come out on Netflix. You deserve it then to binge, right? Right. Okay, great. So we're going to be doing that. What else? What other announcements do we have? Next week will be the Patreon episode that we were going to do this week. It's a really cool case. It has to do with wrestling. It has to do with trust fund babies, I'm pretty sure this guy was pretty much that. And some of you can probably already guess it from that. There's a very popular documentary on Netflix about it. So, okay, that's enough hints because you guys are probably already going to get it. But that is coming out next week. So enjoy this, freeloaders. And just know what used to be our off week, we will now be releasing old Patreon episodes. And you will get to hear yours truly probably talking at the beginning, at the end. Okay? Speaking of me talking, if you'd like to join Patreon, you can hear me talking in my other show, Higher Thoughts, where I discuss all sorts of interesting oddities in society and just whatever else comes to the old dome. But yeah, thank you guys for listening. Spread the word. Look us up on social media, True Crime Guys on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, True Crime Guys Closed Group on Facebook. If you don't want your friends knowing, that you like true crime guys, and they might think that's creepy or whatever. Speaking of that, my daughter has been wearing one of our Galaxy hoodies. If you guys haven't seen them, it's like the Galaxy print all over hoodie. They're on our Ken Custom store at kencustom.com/truecrimeguys. And she's been wearing it to school and stuff. So I guess it's fine. It's probably fine. It's fine. I don't care. Oh, shit. Speaking of plugs and sponsors and stuff, I almost forgot the greatest sponsor ever, Oh My Gaia. And because this is Freeloader episode, you guys get to hear it, okay? Oh My Gaia. If you don't know what Oh My Gaia is an innovative and all-natural deodorant, fragrance, and beard oil company specializing in paraben and aluminum-free products. Their innovative line of deodorants inhibit the growth of odor-causing bacteria while maintaining effectiveness. At Oh My Gaia, they use only all-natural paraben and aluminum-free organic ingredients. She has tons of scents, guys, from vanilla, cherry almond, sandalwood, lavender, lemongrass, Egyptian musk. That's one of my favorites. I'm actually wearing that today. Coconut, dreamsicle, leather, lumberjack, honeysuckle, fireside. She has limited editions too. So if you go on her site at ohmygaia.com, that's ohmygaia.com, you can check it out, and you'll see sometimes she's trying out new scents, or she'll just have a limited number of some that she's offering. She wants to see how they do. But with True Crime Guys, as far as we know, is a permanent staple, we hope, Wendy. But it's True Crime Pine. That is our very own scent, True Crime Pine, and it has our faces on the jar. It has our old school logo with the headshots. It's pretty dope. But if you use our code CREEPER, CREEPER, you can get 15% off your order. Guys, you will not regret it. The deodorant is light. It goes on easy. The smell is not too strong. It's great, and you're not putting aluminum in your armpits. So once again, ohmygaia.com, ohmygaia.com, or at shop_ohmygaia on Instagram. All right, guys, that's it. We hope you enjoyed this blast from the past. Like I said, if you're a Patreon member, maybe you listened again. It's been a long time. It's been 2 years since you've heard us crack all those stupid Gacy jokes. All right, guys, keep creeping. As always, we'll see you next week, Patreon members, freeloaders. See you in 2 weeks. Peace. Keep creeping.